Okay, here is your brain drain for this year's STAR test. So you kind of have two options. First, it's two-sided. So one side is going to have 4 boxes, so it's just simple. The other side, I divide into thirds. And again, this doesn't have to be beautiful. It looks like this. And then I have 4 boxes at the bottom. Why is that? Well, what I put right here is the blob of the United States. Some students like to do it where it's 4 boxes on this side, 4 boxes on this side, and then they grab a piece of paper to do their blob of the United States really big on this. I don't care which way you do it, and you are always during testing allowed to ask for as many scratch pieces of paper, of white plain paper, as you want. I'm going to start on this side of your STAR test brain drain. So at the very top, we have our blob of the United States. And the first thing we're going to put is look for the old man's gold. And we're going to label those land acquisitions. So Louisiana Purchase, F, Florida, T, Texas, O, Oregon, M, Mexican Cession, and G, Gadsden. I'm going to go back and number them in this order. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But I also have to know where we got these chunks of land from, because each one of these we acquired from somebody else, from either buying, going to war for, or negotiating. The first chunk of land, which is the biggest chunk of land we got, Louisiana Purchase, and we purchased it from France. Florida, we got from Spain. Texas, we got from Texas, but originally from Mexico. Oregon was a treaty with Great Britain. Mexican Secession, the name gives it away, so we actually put the treaty that gave us this chunk, which was the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo. And then Gadsden, we bought Gadsden Purchase from Mexico. And seeing here, we have 4 of our chunks come from Spanish-speaking countries. So if you go to these places and you live in Texas, you will notice a lot of the towns are Spanish named. Oregon, I like to put a smiley face in both O's because there's 2 exciting things. We met Manifest Destiny. See, it is along the Pacific Ocean. We got this chunk 4th. It was years later that we get Mexican Secession. So the first time we touched Pacific Ocean is with the Oregon acquisition. And then the second smiley face, because we didn't pay for it and we didn't go to war for it, we negotiated with a treaty with Great Britain. I like to put right here, why was this Mexican Secession so important? Because of gold. And what current state is located here? Texas. The other part I put my map, which we've done a long time. North, South, Midwest, and our new West. And what's the major economy in each of those? The North, it is factories, plantations, farming, and mining. So we have our map pretty filled up. The only other things that I would say, this is what I want you to go for, but there are a few extras that will help you. Where the most famous canal built was somewhere right up here, which was the Erie Canal, which is by New York City. That's important to know. You could also choose to label this as the Union and this as the Confederacy. is some of the most important facts that you need to remember for this particular map, this part of your brain training. So some students like to put this on a separate sheet of paper. Okay, let's go to the next part. So you have your map that has a lot of different things in it. So let's go ahead and take a look at the next box. This comes from now the colonial era. I am going to draw something that looks like this. Now, I want you to help you remember what goes on your brain drain. This is a map, right? Here's a bubble map. This is going to be like a map of 3 triangles, I guess, and then 2 T-charts. So a map, triangle map, T-chart, T-chart. So in this one, it is our distance from Great Britain, or Great Britain neglecting the colonies. This distance leads to self-government and representative government. And then what are examples of self-government and representative government that were created because Great Britain was so far away from the colonies? The first one is the Mayflower Compact. Drawing a flower is unacceptable. You have to write social contract in those petals. The next example was the Virginia House of Burgesses, and we draw 2 guys in here, and they are doing leg reps. They are not working out. They are representatives that are being legislators, and a legislator is a lawmaker. And this was called the Virginia, but I'm going to make it short, House of Burgesses. And they were our very first example of representatives going to a house and making laws. The last one is FC, which stands for First Constitution. This comes from the Fundamental Orders of Connecticut. And I don't write all that out, but CF, C, F, C. This right here is the number 1 tested part of the entire colonial era. If you get a question about one of these things, your answer is always self-government, representative government, or distance from Great Britain. If you get an answer, a question about one of these, look into the picture and the answer is there or in the bubble map. If you get a question about, well, how did the distance from Great Britain affect the colonists? Well, it forced them to govern themselves and they chose a representative government. You're looking for those answers. Or the distance from Great Britain caused them to create their own social contract, the House of Burgesses, or their constitutions. Everything you need for those answers are right here, and it works for you every single time. It turns a more difficult, wordy question into something very easy. Number 1 colonial tested topic. I do not put the extra candy corn in there, but I'll show that in a different video. The next part is the early Republic era, the number 1 tested things on there. So here I draw my G-boat and 2 triangles. My G-boat is my War of 1812, which happened in 1812. And I have 2 causes, and they both start with I's. We learned this word, impressment. It's where another country will kidnap soldiers in the water. So our strategy was to keep our soldiers from being kidnapped. We passed the Embargo Act. Embargo means no cargo. We'll just stop putting our sailors in the water. We'll stop trading with other countries to keep our sailors safe. And then the other one was Indian attacks. And then we don't do any battles. Here are the causes. Boom. What are the effects? They all start with G. It ends with the Treaty of Ghent. It also ends with the era of good feelings and goods. Because of impressment and the Embargo Act, we are now going to make our own goods instead of trade with other countries. We're going to do that for a while, which increases our manufacturing. And then here our last two triangles from the early Republic era is our TJ and Alex triangle. This one is used a lot. So TJ and Alex are the reason we have political parties, because they could not agree over the National Bank and the, if I put eco, obviously that is short for what? Economy. Remember that however you want. TJ and Alex, we have political parties because of they disagreed over the bank and economy. And it doesn't matter if you put what on the triangle. If you get a question about why we have political parties, your answer is here, here, or here. If you have a question about what they disagreed on, here's your answer. Who disagreed on these things? Who created political parties? These two right here. That triangle works for you every single time. The last one is John Marshall. This is, again, extremely heavily tested and super important in American history. John Marshall was the Chief Justice. We have Marbury versus Madison. The court case was the first time in American history judicial review was used. And that is where you find out if a law is constitutional or unconstitutional. M&M's, Jolly Ranchers, unicorns, marshmallows. I don't know what will get you to memorize it, but you do what's best for you. So that is your John Marshall triangle. So that's your early republic. Now we have two T-charts. This is an industrial revolution, and this is our other miniature war that we don't talk about battles. So this is causes and the effects of the industrial revolution. Clint. Cures. Capital is a cause. We had money. We had lots of labor. We had lots of ideas. Natural resources. And transportation. What were major effects of the Industrial Revolution? Travel and goods got cheaper or less expensive. Urbanization was huge. Because of the Industrial Revolution, tens of thousands of Americans moved to cities, which is called urbanization. Things became more rapid. Travel, production of goods. Things became more efficient. They were made quicker, better, faster, everything. And a negative effect is slavery. That increases. Again, this is also, from this chart, the effects are the most tested part of the Industrial Revolution and all stem from this right here. The last is the causes and the effects of the Mexican-American War. Again, no battles, causes and effects, just like the War of 1812. What were the causes? The border dispute, manifest destiny, and Texas. This is what made Mexico mad. America wanted to gain more land going westward, and there was a border dispute between the two. So what are the effects? After the war's over, the Rio Grande is the official border. America gains the Mexican secession. And all this happens with the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo. Again, this is not everything you learned. This is the most important. So then we're going to simply turn this over. And the most tested part of your entire STAAR test is the Constitution. So the first thing you're going to do is draw the Constitution tree and label your leaves on each one. First, I label your branches J, E, L. In the judicial branch is the Supreme Court. which has a Chief Justice and judges. The executive branch has the president, the vice president, and his cabinet members, the people who advise him on decisions. The legislative branch has Congress, which includes the House of Representatives and the Senate. I have to have this to be able to do scaredy cats run from people. I need to know these groups to be able to do some of this. So, separation of powers, a quote talking about just one branch would be separation of powers. Checks and balances, I am looking for two branches in the quote. I can talk about multiple leaves, but if I'm talking about the Senate, House of Representatives, and Chief Justice, I'm checks and balances. If I am just staying on one branch and talking about Congress, House of Rep, and Senate, I'm multiple leaves, but I stay on one branch, so I'm separation of powers. Elect, choose, or Congress. Republicanism, the quote has to say elect or choose, or it's talking about how we directly or elect or choose Congress. That is republicanism. Federalism has to say U.S. and state. It is that simple. Federalism has to talk about both of these. Boom, that equals federalism. The most popular federalism fight was the nullification crisis. P is popular sovereignty, and we look for the keyword people. And if we see that word people, the answer is popular sovereignty. The next big portion of the Constitution is our Federalist and Anti-Federalist. The Federalist side has Mad, Ham. That is Madison and Hamilton. The other side is Mason and Henry. But if you can remember Mad Ham is Team Federalist, you'll know this side is Anti-Federalist. We have 3 F's, 4 A's. So your Federalists are for the new Constitution. They are for a strong national government. Please remember national, federal, United States, central is all the same thing. And they are for weak state governments. That doesn't mean state governments don't have any power. They just have weaker powers. An anti-federalist has a different mindset. They are against this new Constitution. They are against the idea of a strong national government. They are against the idea of a weak state government. And they are famous for arguing for the Bill of Rights. I like to think of a Federalist. They are Team Federal Government, and this side is Team State Government. You need to be able to read a quote and see who thinks which way. Is this a Federalist talking or an Anti-Federalist? And a lot of the questions are why. And a Federalist is going to want a stronger national government because it's proven that Articles of Confederation isn't working. And this is what we need for stability and more organization. And then you have your Anti-Federalists who are used to the old-fashioned way. And states are more in charge, do their own thing. But they do know that our country at this time, when they have their first argument, does need some restructuring because Shays' Rebellion proved that the United States isn't, its structure isn't going so well. This right here is your most tested part of the Constitution. So the Anti-Federalists are going to get their Bill of Rights. The first 10 are added at the same time. We're going to number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Those are the first Bill of Rights. Those are added very quickly to our Constitution, which is why we call it an amendment. Amendment is an addition or change. After we signed the Constitution, we knew this was already going to happen. As American history goes on, we added 11, 12, 13, 14, and 15. We, in this class, stop at 15. You'll learn the rest in high school. 7-Eleven, the gas station, think of that. You get to cross those two off of your brain drain. Number 1 is RAPS, religion, assembly, petition, press, speech. You have to know what each means, especially the 2 P's is what most students struggle on. I typically just write guns for 2, the right to bear arms. 3 is you do not have to quarter soldiers in your home. It's not an issue now. It was an issue then. 4, knock on the door. To search and seize, you need a warrant. Which I may have spelled warrant incorrectly. 5, you have the right to remain silent. Number 6, speedy jury trial. Don't forget the jury part. Number 8, you are protected against cruel, unusual, and excessive fines. Cruel and unusual punishment and excessive fines. Number 9, other rights. This was so the Anti-Federalists knew that the federal government might say, oh, you didn't put it in your list, so you don't have that right. There are other rights that are guaranteed. They just may not be listed here. And then 10 is federalism, which happens to be one of the principles. You'll see federalism a whole lot. Federalism means the United States has power to make laws. The states have powers to make laws. They both have those powers. Sometimes, though, those powers clash, as we saw in the nullification crisis and the Civil War. Number 12 is Congress chooses president. So if a president does not, a candidate doesn't reach the magic electoral votes, that means that Congress will choose the president. We do not have a runoff election. And then we just learned these. Free. Citizens vote. That right there completes your brain drain for the 2021 STAR test.